Let's maul in the Central Committee. Let's cringe in the Central Committee. Let's bog in the Central Committee right now.
Let's check out the who really controls U.S. gas prices from our friends over at AJ Plus.
Financially recover from this.
But why is gas so expensive? For Americans, going to the gas station these days is painful.
I'm never gonna financially recover from this.
But why is gas so expensive? Sure, geopolitical crises don't help, but Russia isn't the world's biggest oil
What do you
producer.
want, Use Night King?
It's not Iran or Iraq or even Saudi Arabia. It's actually the United States. So why are Americans paying so much for gas?
Oh, okay. Trump 2024X says Biden called Mexicans rapists. Okay. I'm gonna get rid of those rapist Mexicans. Joe Biden 20. Wait, did Joe Biden call Mexicans rapists? Is this a new scandal? Is this a new scandal? I mean, I'd believe it. Curtis Sam Sider, thanks for the 10 gifted subs. And then he said Hunter Biden corrupt energy company Burisma is grounds for prison. Okay, I agree with that. The Don ain't president anymore. That's true. Hunter Ukraine's money laundering funded their biolabs. I think they have enough money to fund their own biolabs, you know. Yes, I'm Canadian. My name is a troll. I mean, I'm sorry, chat, but we need to ban Canadians from talking about politics until we can figure out what the hell is going on. Sorry, keffals. But you know, for every one keffals, there's a Lauren Southern, there's a Mark Stein, there's a Jordan Peterson. You know, on net, you know, Steven Crowder, the Surfs. Like, think about what we could do if we could ban all those people. I'd be willing to give up keffals. I'm sorry, keffals. I love you, but think about that. Think about the peace we would all have if we just could ban Canadians from talking about politics. Ted Cruz, that's another Canadian. Just think about it. Yes. Peace in our time, truly. Ted Cruz.
The gasoline you put in your car comes from crude oil that's pumped out of the ground. And the reason Americans are paying record prices for gas is because the US doesn't treat its fossil fuel resources.
Look how mind-bogglingly stupid this kind of infrastructure is. Like, the amount of people being transported on this highway is tiny. Just mind-bogglingly stupid. Once again, Hasan is right. Canada only sends their best and their worst. True. But they've got a lot more, like most white capitalist countries, they got a hell of a lot more worse than they do best.
The way many other big-time oil countries do. Oil is not treated as a public resource. Instead, it's privatized for corporate profit. Since 2015, the US government has allowed oil extracted in the United States to be sold abroad on the global market. The result is that US-made oil is priced based on global conditions, not domestic US demand. When there's geopolitical instability in another part of the world, like another top oil producer invading its neighbor, a lot of uncertainty gets introduced into the global oil market. Will tankers be able to deliver their cargo? Will pipelines be protected? Will production levels be maintained? What if an oil producer is unable to...
LOL, Americans thinking they are better. Oh, excuse me? Excuse me? Have we gotten under the skin of a Canadian? Well, let me tell you something, Canadian. I never said Americans were better. I just said Canadians were worse than their stereotype. The thing about Canadians is they get treated the same way as British people by Americans. Oh, the Canadians. Oh. Guess what? You're the same shit. You suck. You fucking suck. Especially Brits. You fucking suck. And it's about time some Americans, some real Americans like myself, finally stood up and said what needs to be said. You're no better. In fact, in many ways, you're worse. So shut up. Shut the fuck up. And be embarrassed about your country right now. The U.S. does actually allow dual citizenship. Many other countries force you to give up citizenship. China, Vietnam, etc. I mean, I kind of totally agree with the one country at a time rule. That's what I say. As a Canadian, I 100% agree. Thank you, Canadian.
Deliver their product. That would reduce supply, which drives up the price. And because the United States leaves it up to private oil companies to extract, refine, and
Boris saying that a ceasefire would not be enough to lift sanctions. Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh boy. See, this kind of stuff is what pushes us closer to a massive conflict or global recession. This is the kind of dumbass shit that doesn't serve any diplomatic purpose and doesn't serve any political purpose. It's not like people are going to be like, oh man, I was going to vote for Boris, but you know, he didn't undermine peace negotiations at some point. Like, what? God, people are fucking the worst, man. Hammond Fist, thanks to the 17 months,
oil,
man.
It doesn't control prices, and it doesn't control whether or not supply is increased to meet demand. Oil companies do. On the other hand, other major oil producers like Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates treat oil production as a matter of national security and regulate it that way. These countries maintain spare oil pumping capacity that can be turned on and off in a matter of months, so their citizens are better protected from the shock of global market spikes. That's why their consumers can expect reasonably controlled prices with no sudden swings. In fact, even as Russia invades Ukraine and faces massive international sanctions, gas prices there remain a fraction of what they are in the US. But even before events in Ukraine drove global prices higher, they'd been rising in the United States for months because oil companies were refusing to produce more. Because of the COVID pandemic, the global demand for oil dropped significantly in early 2020. As a planet, we were briefly using a lot less energy. But this was a financial disaster for a lot of US-based oil companies that had recently invested in new extraction. Many had to shut down completely or at least reduce their output. But when demand went back to normal, many oil producers decided they didn't want to take the risk of investing in more production again.
But the fundamental question about why we're not growing is because we have pivoted as an industry, at least for the public guys, from a business model that is chasing growth at all costs to now we're chasing returns.
Translation?
So in other words, they are just giving cash to their investors as soon as they get it, and they're not investing in production, they're not investing in other energy. Which makes perfect sense because that's what capitalism does. They see the end of the game, and so they're just grabbing as much cash as they can. We're so fucking stupid. Private enterprise is so worthless. Absolutely garbage. Fucking useless, man.
We're not going to invest in creating more supply. Instead, we want to keep prices high. And it worked. In 2021, the 25 biggest oil and gas companies made $205 billion in profit. The Biden administration tried asking other oil-producing countries to pump more, but they also refused for both financial and political reasons. So instead of benefiting from the US being the world's biggest oil producer, the US government is left begging oil companies and other countries—
Fucking loser country. What a loser country we are. Just pathetic.
—to release more oil into the market to give some relief to us out here buying gas to get to work. Not exactly a dignified position for a global superpower. But the private ownership of a natural resource like oil does more than just expose American consumers to higher prices caused by wars or global pandemics. It also exposes them to profiteering. Even when market forces stabilized, we've seen that US oil companies had little incentive to lower prices. With average gas prices over $4 a gallon and the federal minimum wage at $7.25 an hour, it can cost a low-income worker their entire day's pay to fill up the car they need to drive to work. It's clear something needs to change. Now, there are no serious calls to nationalize oil in the United States. After all, even water is sometimes privatized here. But there are politicians now calling for oil companies to face a windfall profits tax.
We should nationalize the oil companies and create an American oil company like Norway has, or Saudi Arabia has. I like to say Norway because, you know, people like Norway more, but there is no reason we should have oil and gas exploration in private hands at this point. They're so highly subsidized by the US that we should just own them.
Essentially, that means a tax on excess profits.
I do some oil and gas title work, and I thought it would get busier, but the work has significantly dropped off. Why? Because they have so many leases they're not exploring already, Dennis.
In the hope that it would discourage oil companies from gouging consumers. But even if it passes,
when somebody says, haha, good luck with that, do you mean like, haha, good luck with that, like American politicians will never agree? Or, haha, good luck with that, like it's impossible? Because if you mean the first one, then you're obviously right. If you mean the second one, well, then you're wrong.
A partial solution, because it still leaves US consumers vulnerable to global price surges. Right now, oil companies have powerful lobbies that will not only fight a tax like that, but also don't want to see the US unchain itself from fossil fuels. The oil industry has spent hundreds of millions of dollars lobbying the federal government.
Jesus
More
Christ.
public control of oil would mean less corporate pressure on Congress to maintain the current fossil fuel economy. Because while we need more affordable gas prices now, our future depends on transitioning to different forms of energy altogether.